Rich parents neglected nerdy son his whole life, denied him basic needs. Now his successful tech business has them crying scam and begging for his forgiveness. So I, 27 am, started my own business with the help of a couple of my college buddies a year ago. We've been doing great financially and are profitable right now. A few days back, my estranged parents, both 54, who hadn't spoken to me since graduation, finally contacted me to ask if I'd be willing to let them come on board as partners since they wanted to invest in my business, but I said no. I didn't discuss it with my friends as everyone knew my terrible equation with my parents and I didn't want them to be involved in my business at any cost. My parents have always neglected me and mocked me as a kid growing up, which was really strange because I was the kind of child that most parents would be proud of. They're both pretty well off. My dad's a dental surgeon and my mother's the CFO at a firm. I grew up in a high-achieving household and naturally, I was very ambitious right from a very young age. But I don't know why, my parents were never very supportive of me and would make fun of me for being too nerdy. They were rich but barely contributed to my basic needs purely out of spite. I had no idea why they hated me so much until I realized that indirectly, they blamed me for not being able to reach the kind of success they'd hoped for. They were pretty successful but they weren't famous like they'd hoped to be. I found out about this while ranting to my aunt, my dad's younger sister, now 46F, the only person who understood me, when I was 16, and she told me the truth behind their unreasonable behavior and hatred for me since she thought I was old enough to know. They blamed me because they'd had to put time and money into raising me and they believed that had they invested the same amount of time, money, and hard work in their jobs rather than me, then they would have been at a much better place in their respective professions. They had me because of pressure from their families and didn't even want a kid, but now that they were stuck with me, they had to deal with me somehow and their choice of dealing with me was to bully me and make me feel bad constantly. I'd say I was deprived of a lot of things as a kid because even though everything was paid for, I never had any help from my parents. Not with small things like maybe homework or projects, and definitely not with bigger things like fights at school. If I asked for anything that I didn't absolutely need, they'd just turn me away or worse, make fun of me. They'd mock my appearance, which was easy since I was pretty scrawny and nerdy looking, and if not that, they'd make fun of my affinity for computers and tell me that I'd grow up to be an IT guy and nothing else, so investing in me was a waste of money. I was seriously emotionally neglected, and on top of that, these are the kind of insults that I was used to growing up. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it and instead, used to believe that there must be something wrong with me, which is why my parents don't love me the way others love their kids. It was pretty effed up, but for me, it was normal. In my teenage years, I started rebelling against it a little, but my dad shut it down pretty quickly and threatened to have me thrown to the streets if I didn't behave myself. So instead I resorted to talking about them to my aunt, who asked me 1,000 times if I wanted her to report them, but I kept saying no because I was scared of what had happened next. My aunt wouldn't be able to adopt me and I didn't want to be a burden on anyone, so I chose to suffer at my parents' house, and whenever things would get rough, I'd speak to my aunt and feel better. Then when I found out the reason behind my parents' behavior, I decided that I was going to disappear from their lives after I was done with college since they didn't want me. They'd sent me to public school. I'm sorry if I sound arrogant, but I think it was a waste of my potential. Anyway, that should have been enough of a hint for me to know that they didn't give a damn about my education or even me in general. But I still had some expectations from them, which all went to hell when they told me that after high school ended and I turned 18, I wouldn't have a place in their home anymore until I made something of myself. And additionally, they wouldn't pay for my college tuition either. I finally snapped and told them that they couldn't do this to me because I knew I had a bright future. I'd been a straight A student all my life, and if they kicked me out at this stage of my life, right before I was about to start college, they'd be jeopardizing my future. They were adamant and told me, you don't even have much of a future that we can jeopardize, so quit thinking so highly of yourself. Then they told me that I shouldn't hold out hope for a bright future because my teachers and friends had all wrongly led me to believe that I was some genius and that some lowly IT guy who fixed computers for dummies in corporate offices is probably the highest position I'll ever be able to get. Honestly, it was a pretty ridiculous thing to say because even these allegedly lowly IT guys are pretty well versed in their own way and are equally deserving of respect, but my ignorant, disgusting parents would never understand that. I tried to argue my way into making them pay for my tuition at least. I'd worry about my accommodation later, but they didn't budge. So I ran away from home a few weeks before my 18th birthday and showed up at my aunt's house. I applied to a lot of colleges with scholarships while my aunt still continued trying to persuade my parents, but with no luck. Finally, we decided that I'd attend college wherever I had the highest percentage of my tuition waived off. Luckily, I got into a college with an 80% scholarship and had a decent computer science program as well, so I was satisfied with it, and my aunt decided to pay for whatever amount I needed. She's in sales and didn't earn as much as my parents back then. She was pretty middle class, but she still agreed, and it helped that my tuition was pretty low since I was a scholarship student. I'd only come back home if it was absolutely necessary for me, and otherwise, I'd stay in my dorm because my aunt would often travel for work. So that's how I planned on going through with college, and my life improved once I was out of my parents' house. I was no longer worried or anxious all the time, so I felt a lot happier and was able to make friends a lot easier than I used to be. That's how I met my current friends and business partners who agreed to set up our own IT firm, and we're doing relatively well now. I thought that my parents wouldn't care what I was up to since they never cared back when I was in school, but when they learned that I was graduating college and I was valedictorian, they decided to attend the ceremony but couldn't enter since I didn't buy them tickets, and neither did I invite them as we were not on speaking terms. We met after the ceremony was over and I was very shocked to see them standing with my aunt, who looked just as annoyed as me since she probably had to deal with them. After the graduation ceremony, I had plans to go out drinking with my friends, but instead, I spent the next 2 hours in my parents' hotel room, fighting and arguing with them. They were mad that they hadn't been invited to the graduation, but my aunt had and wanted an explanation, which was funny because hello, they didn't let me live with them, kicked me to the streets at 18, and then told me they wouldn't pay for my tuition even when they could afford to. That plus all the mistreatment and emotional issues they caused me throughout my childhood and well into my adulthood. I didn't think they deserved an explanation, but I didn't want them to throw a tantrum outside my college campus, so I accompanied them to the hotel before losing my temper. I told them that I didn't want to see them ever again, and if they tried to contact me then I'd make sure I got a protective order or something against them, then left the hotel to go meet my friends. I wasn't going to let them ruin a happy day for me, and after that, I didn't speak to them. I heard from my aunt later that they were disappointed and angry, but they'd left and were discussing the idea of disinheriting me, which made no difference because I didn't expect them to leave anything to me either. So that was it. It's been almost 7 years since that happened, and we haven't spoken since. Then a couple of days ago, they called me out of the blue. They'd asked my aunt for my phone number and she'd given it to them because they'd told her they wanted to apologize. She told me that she'd wanted to alert me about it, but she'd forgotten, and I get it. She's busy nowadays, so it's fine. But they didn't apologize for anything and went straight to the business proposition because now, investing in me is profitable to them as compared to all those years ago. I obviously declined, hung up, and then blocked them. I told my friends about it as well, but they didn't mind me declining without consulting with them first because they knew about my personal history with my parents. I didn't know what else to expect afterward, but the very next day, they hit back by tagging me and all my buddies in a scathing Facebook post where they were talking about how I was not the self-made computer whiz that I made myself out to be, but just a guy with daddy's money who had succeeded in creating a moderately successful business, all because of his parents. But now I was refusing to acknowledge the help they'd given me all through these years. I was dumbstruck at the post and almost called them up to tell them off, but before any of that, I decided to get back at them with something I'd kept to myself for years. I had a couple of old videos of them from when I was a teenager and still used to live them, where I was documenting every day of my life living with my parents, just in case I'd ever need to prove in court or whatever that they were terrible parents. I'd never posted it because I didn't want anything to do with them, and if I posted these videos of them being rude to me, making fun of me, and acting like I was the worst thing that could have happened to mankind, then there would surely be repercussions for it, and back then, I just didn't want any drama, so I let it go. However, this Facebook post of theirs changed everything, and I finally posted those. Now here's where I might have been the a-hole. I used my public profile on Instagram, wrote a long caption explaining my history with my parents, and then uploaded the videos to call them out. After that was done, I called my lawyer and filled her in on whatever was going on, but she was already a step ahead and had started the paperwork to file a defamation lawsuit against my parents for what they've done, and was about to get in touch with my co-partners as well to ask them if they'd be fine with this lawsuit since their names had been dragged into the Facebook post as well. There were already a couple of comments on their post from a few of my relatives and some friends of my parents, saying that it's great that I'd finally been exposed and that they'd never worked with us, so we definitely had grounds to sue. I also sent those screenshots to my attorney for future use and told my business partners about it as well so they'd be in the loop. So once that was all done, I waited for them to call me, begging for forgiveness. And they did call me from my aunt's number a few days later, but they called me demanding an apology and saying that I'd screwed up by posting those videos because while they posted their rant about me on their personal accounts on Facebook, which meant only a few people would see it, I posted it on my public profile, and a lot more people were going to see it since I had a significant number of followers. They told me that I needed to take that post down ASAP because people had already started messaging them with hateful stuff, and some were even threatening me. This could all effectively end both their careers since they didn't come off well in the videos I posted, and if their employers saw these posts then they'd be screwed. I got a little defensive there and told them that they deserved this and then hung up, but I did archive those posts and turned off my phone for a while. When I finally got back to my phone after a couple of hours, my parents sent me an email stating that they were apologetic for everything that had happened in the past, but also mentioned that what I'd done in retaliation was awful. Besides, I posted personal videos that featured them without their consent, and that was grounds for them to sue as well. Apparently, I guess they'd been served with a defamation suit, so they told me that I needed to take it back or else they wouldn't hesitate to talk about how unethical I've been, and it would certainly negatively impact my business. I've discussed this with my business partners and they really don't think there's any reason for us to back down from the suit because they think we did things the right way, unlike those who lied and presented distorted facts just to make me look like a liar and take away my credibility. They have a point, but for some reason, I still feel guilty going through with it because they have apologized in the email, and I know that this suit is going to be bad for all of us in one way or the other because of all the negativity attached to it. I don't understand what to do right now, either for suing my parents for defamation even though they apologized to me. Update 1. Hey guys, so I've decided to go through with the lawsuit for a couple of reasons. It wasn't my decision alone anyway, since my friends were also involved, and even though their post wasn't as widely viewed as mine when I uploaded it, I'm sure a couple of people still saw it, and it could have really affected my business. The intent was also to negatively publicize my personality and firm so they can get an ego high off of ruining my life's work, so I think defamation is fair game. Besides, their apology doesn't mean much when they apologized only and only realized that their own careers were at stake if they didn't. So they didn't really mean it, they just said that they were sorry for the sake of it. I'd just been going easy on my parents for my entire life almost because I was afraid of them. Even as an adult who's almost 30, I feel scared to even go up against them because that's just how I've been wired, I guess. The fear is so deep-rooted that I didn't even realize this was fear until you guys in the comments pointed out to me exactly how many times I'd had the opportunity to tell people the truth about my parents in the past, but I didn't do so on purpose, all because I was scared of what might happen. The thing is, now I know nothing can happen to me and I'm the one in power now, so they really can't touch me. I'm going to sue them regardless of their apology, which was pretty half-hearted to even begin with, and then we'll see what happens once we're through. The one thing that I'm sure about is that I'm going to make sure that they pay. I'm done being the good guy now, especially for people who don't deserve it. My parents were downright cruel to me and no child deserves to grow up in a house like that, so now that I have the chance to get revenge on them in my own way, I definitely will do it. I've been the bigger person so far, but I don't see any reason to continue that any longer when they keep picking on me again and again just because they want a spot in the limelight. It's just disgusting and I won't stand for it, not anymore. Update 2. My aunt contacted me today to ask what I decided to do about the situation with my parents, and I told her that we were going through with the lawsuit. She was satisfied with the answer and then told me that she was proud of me. She also apologized for never doing enough when I was a kid, but honestly, I don't blame her. Back then, she was also just trying to make her way in the world and starting out in her career, so she couldn't really afford to take care of me, but when it counted, she stepped up and did the needful, and I'll forever be grateful for that. My grandparents and everyone else in my family were practically in love with my parents, so none of them would ever buy it if I told them how my parents were in reality and how they treated me. Even if my aunt had gone to CPS, there would have been a fair chance that I would have ended up in foster care or something worse. I'm not saying that she's perfect, but I feel the need to come to her defense when there are so many people jumping at the opportunity to hate on the only person who had ever taken a stand for me and tried to be there for me in whatever capacity she could. I don't care if what she did was right or wrong, but whatever she did was good enough for me. That's it. I haven't spoken to my parents after the email, and they're probably still waiting for me to withdraw the suit. It's been 4 days and we've decided that we're going to go ahead with a court-appointed mediator for the negotiations first, and then if the need arises, we'll let the case go to court. But for now, an out-of-court settlement is what we're trying to go for. My parents have money and they have a lot of it, so it's not like I have anything to feel guilty about, and they're the ones who screwed up, so of course they have to pay for it. I don't know what's up with their jobs right now, since there've been a lot of hue and cry from their end when I posted those videos of them claiming that I was putting their jobs on the line by doing this. I can't believe the amount of gaslighting and drama that their phone call and emails were full of. I'm just lucky I didn't go soft and fall for any of it, because that would have been pretty sad and pathetic. And to think that they even tried to equate the two incidents as if what I've done was just as bad as what they did.